Oh, you want to talk about
Let's talk
how we met?
Talk about the cottage, then we'll
Yeah.
go
Talk
back
about the
to
cottage
it.
first. That's
As
what
long as we're talking about the cottage.
Well, the cottage was just as that we said, how we built it, and we moved in.
It was like
we moved in with
we
our
watched it
cribs
from the
and
get-go. We literally moved in because Daddy would bring the truck, and and it was an open truck, and we would take everything. I would take everything because now we had a baby. We needed the crib. We needed. She wasn't in a high chair yet, but they didn't have all the things that we have now for babies. But I had to take everything. I had to take everything that we need because then we stayed there without a telephone.
And without a washing machine.
We had a Ringer washing machine. What do you mean we didn't have a washing machine? But when men build a house, they forget that you have to put dishes and clothes somewhere. We had no closets and no cupboards.
And no telephone.
And no telephone. However, I loved it. I loved the cottage. My memories are wonderful of it. And Gloria and Terry got to go to the cottage, and Marilyn would come with Sharon and Howie. And Debbie, I don't think so. I think it was finished by that time.
Debbie's older than Howie.
Yeah.
Oh, then with Debbie. Then Marilyn
And
would come
maybe
with
Howie, too, because we stopped going there when Pam was
born. I stopped going there.
That was the end.
I
So that
said,
was 40 years
but
ago.
the cottage.
You guys didn't live there all year, though. Right?
No.
All summer.
That's what I'm saying.
We would move out Father's Day and move back a week before school
Labor Day.
would start. A week before Labor Day.
Yeah.
A week before Labor Day, so I can get the kids ready.
And
for
Anna
school.
had a real automatic washer that she did all the clothes in the bag.
In the backyard.
So in the summer,
Like
you were there all summer. You never came back to
I
town?
didn't
No.
learn how to drive until Gloria and Terry were born, and I had the two of you in the car, Terry and Gloria in the car, when Daddy was teaching me how to drive on the road behind Harvey's Lake there, where they race cars, and the road
Route
goes
29.
The road goes this way and this way and this way. I learned how to drive there with two kids sitting in the back, because my mother, God bless her soul, she loved us, but she wouldn't let me get a babysitter, and she wouldn't babysit. Because what if she wants to go down to the bingo, or what if she wants to go out? So then I'll get a babysitter, Mom. No, I don't. I want privacy. So that was with the cottage. So we put up with it because we all lived there in the summer. And if you want to have relaxation, you have to put up with everything else. But so we did. I loved it too much not to ever give it up. We would walk down to the beach. So when we were there, I was a beach person. Marilyn didn't care one iota about the beach, so we made a deal. I would take all the kids out of the cottage. She would straighten up and make sandwiches and bring them down to you, remember? And we would eat the sandwich, buy the milk and the ice cream at the place at the beach, and stay there. And stay there until it was time to go back, hours and hours. And I loved it. The kids loved it. And I used to like to read on the beach, so I told my kids they're not to bother me while I'm reading unless they're bleeding.
And a little funny incident about the cottage, while she's telling you this story, I used to drive out every night after work to go to the cottage.
Oh, yeah.
At this particular time, I already had a station wagon, used, but I had a station wagon. And it had Kaplan's furniture on the outside of it. And I'm driving out there, and the siren is going off. The state police are after me. And right after Dallas, I pulled over to find out what I did wrong. And the state police comes over, and he says, who are you? And I gave him my license, all that. And he said, well, how come you have Kaplan's car? I says, I'm their son-in-law. Oh, he says, you're Abe's son-in-law. I says, yeah. He says, I missed the payment this week. Will you please tell Mr. Kaplan I'll double up next week? And that's why the state police, remember?
Yeah, I remember. He comes in, he said, I can't believe what just happened to me. What did I tell you? And he told us all the story that
State
happened.
police pulled me over.
Can you imagine that happening?
All right, so
today? Yeah.
I know you guys met when you were really
All right.
Well, the very first time I remember seeing Pop Pop, we were in, it was the junior high school, which was 6th and 7th grade. and in the schoolyard, and he had a cast on his arm. And I didn't know him, but I said to him, "What's the cast for?" And he said, "I broke my arm." And everybody was signing the cast. And that's the first time I remember. And then I don't remember a lot of other things, but I do remember now we were in high school. And Jim made you dance when it was time for Jim. Instead of exercising, they would bring the boys in and they would bring the girls in, and they would line us up, the girls on one side and so forth, and put on a record, and the boy had to go over and ask a girl to dance. And Pop came over and asked me to dance.
His name wasn't Pop-Up.
Irving came over and asked me to dance, and we were dancing, and by then we knew each other, and I don't remember things on each other. We knew each other, but he said to me...
We were meeting each other on the streets and so forth.
Yeah, we were talking to each other in the crowd. There was a crowd that we were friendly with and all that, but I didn't know what he said to me. He said to me, "I really shouldn't be dancing," but I didn't want to make a fuss. I said, "Why not?" He said, "My mother died," and he said, the month isn't up yet, that I shouldn't be dancing. And I remember that like it happened the other day, because I didn't know what to say. It's like it was an embarrassing thing. And after that, we really started to become really good friends. And we didn't really date, but the crowd would go out and we would be, and then shall I tell the posterity what you did?
With Diane?
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
I would like to tell Diane about it sometime. Diane and I were best friends, and she was at my house, and she lived a couple blocks away, and Daddy was there. Irv was there. Is that how you want me to do it? And Irv was there, and a few other people were there, and she said, "Oh, Irving, will you walk me home?" And he said, "Well, sure, Diane, I'll walk you home." Well, next morning, bright and early, she wakes me up with a phone call to say, "Oh, guess who asked me to the, what was your fraternity? AZA. Guess who asked me to the AZA dance?" And I said, "Who?" She said, "Irving asked me to the AZA dance." And my heart sunk. I couldn't believe that my best girlfriend he asked to the dance and not me. Well, Irving couldn't stand it, and he fixed me up with a date to come in their car because I
had the car.
He had the car.
I always had a car.
But he fixed me up with a date, and that was Harold Block. Do you remember?
Yeah.
He was a very nice guy, also our age that we knew. And Harold asked me to go to the dance. And
we double dated.
Diane probably doesn't remember that at all. Who are you going to show this to?
How old were you around there?
What were we then for the AZA dance?
Probably 16 because I had a license. I drove.
You were driving before you were 16.
Yeah, I was 15 when I got my license, but
I don't think we
driving.
were 16 yet, because I have a picture in the album that you took me at when I was 16 to the AZA Sweetheart Prom.
Yeah.
And so that was
I
after
took you,
that was after that.
Right.
That was after
Which
that.
was after that.
Yeah. So we were about 15 then.
So what happened like through high school? Did you guys date, or were you just friends?
We were friends and we were dating, and then we were on automatic. It was like we were a thing.
We were
And
dating.
when he joined the service, when he called me on the phone and said, I joined the Navy, I felt like my whole world dropped out. I said, "You what? You're not going to come? You're not going to go to school? You're not going to graduate?" He said, "I have to go in the service." Everybody was in the service. All of his brothers and all of his brothers-in-law were in the service. And we've talked about it since then. And he said he had no idea about that it would, how dangerous it was.
I didn't know. I was a kid.
The war was still on. I know he said that they
sure.
ended the war because he joined the service, but the war was still on, and he was on a boat in the middle of the Pacific when the war
Can
ended.
you talk about that a little bit? Just what it was like. 'Cause I remember you told me once.
The first part of the war ended
I
while
went
you
to
were still in
Sampson,
boot
New
camp,
York.
but the Japanese part was still on. Yeah.
I went to Sampson, New York for my boot camp, and I was in training there, and we won the marching flag, which gave you a night in Geneva, New York. You know, out of boot camp. You went there and they gave you a night. Well, I was 17 to start with, and I never knew what a drink was in my life. And I went to Sampson, New York, and had my first beer probably, and I got drunk. And I came back. When I looked on the roster, I had guard duty that night, and I fell asleep at guard duty. Now, this is during the war. It's very
During
dangerous.
a war, they can
It's
shoot
very
you
dangerous.
for falling asleep on guard duty.
But anyway, they didn't do anything seriously to me, but they made me stay in boot camp 2 weeks longer than normal. And in that 2-week period is when Germany surrendered. The Japanese surrendered by the time I got to Sampson. But in that 2 weeks,
Germany surrendered.
in other words, I was there 10 weeks, and that's when Japan surrendered. And that 2 weeks extra that I was in boot camp, Germany surrendered. So actually, and then from there I went by train, troop train, to San Francisco. And I was in a debarkation area, and I went on a ship, and I cried all the ways out in the Pacific. I was just lonesome. I realized what I did. I thought I was kind of stupid of what I did.
And he wasn't with his regular buddies.
I
that
wasn't
he
with
went
no.
because of
Everybody
that
was
incident.
separated by this time. And I finally got over there, and they put me on the ship that I ended up surfing my full time on, which was a floating dry dock.
What did you do on the ship?
I started chipping decks like every sailor does and painting ships. And then I thought this was not for me, and I went to see personnel officer, and they said there was an opening for a corpsman, a pharmacist mate. And he said, I think you're qualified to do that because I worked in a drugstore for a week. And it was happened to be a very, very nice officer. And took me over to one of the sections, and they were giving needles that time. He says, if you can give a needle, you can be a pharmacist. And I started giving needles, and the next thing you know, I had a whole ship to myself. I was the only pharmacist mate on the ship. But the war was ended, as we said, so everybody was going home also. So the ship that had 100 and some people on it ended up with 14. So when we came back to the United States, 14 months, 12 months later,
Altogether, it was only like 17 months.
17 months.
Yeah.
So when we came back to the United States, we came back with 14 people, and I got discharged at Norfolk, Virginia. That's right.
Were you a cook? I remember you telling me you were a cook.
No, I was very friendly with the cook of 14 people. The most important 2 people on the ship was the pharmacist mate and the cook, because the pharmacist mate had the alcohol that they were drinking, and the cook made the food. So we were the 2 most important things. The captain didn't mean anything, the officers didn't mean anything, just he and I, and we were the best of friends. And we went through the Panama Canal at that time. We went on a ship that is wider, and even in today's standard, wider than the aircraft carriers. Well, we went through it. We hit the sides of the Panama Canal coming through. That's how wide our... But we were being towed. We didn't have a motor that took us through.
Tell them what a floating dry dock is.
A floating dry dock, if interested in it, is they are made in sections. They can be made from 2 sections, I guess, to... Ours was the largest, with 7 sections. A floating dry dock, when a country is at war and a ship is damaged out at sea, doesn't make any difference how far out at sea. If a ship is damaged at sea, all these sections of this floating dry dock can attach to each other until they become one monster shipyard. When this becomes a shipyard, They have empty.
They leave the air out somehow.
No, they put water in.
Oh, they put water in. They made it sink.
They made it sink like a submarine. They had empty pontoons, whatever you want to call them. That's why they stayed afloat high. But when you filled them with water, they submerged.
And so
And the ship that was damaged would just float right onto this section. They leave the water out. It would come up, and the ship would come right out of the water. Right? It's a really an amazing. Now each section of these floating dry docks had its particular thing. One had the machine shop. One had this kind of shop. That I got on the one with all the food. So
and we were
this
being
food was
rationed.
enough to serve all of you know
All right.
the.
And home in the USA, we had ration books. You only allowed a certain amount of sugar, a certain amount of meat, a certain amount of
coupons.
eggs. You had coupons, and you were only allowed to buy the things that were shortage. Gasoline too, but my mind didn't care about that. I didn't care about that, but the food thing, and it was just the food thing. He's writing me letters. Boy, I couldn't wait for those letters. The mailman would come to the back of, and I could see him out the window, and anything for me, and I would have again a letter, and he's telling me about, we had steak again. I am so sick of steak. I can't look at a steak.
That was the easiest thing for the cook to make. He wasn't going to make a meal for 14 of us. So because we had watches, everybody had watches. It was never 14 at a time. You know, four. A lot of them were watching the evaporators making water. Another one's watching the boilers. Another one was doing this. Another one's doing that. So the biggest amount that would ever come to a meal was 4 people.
Were you ever nervous? Once you were there, were you nervous about being in action and all, or was it just 'cause
Knowing that the war was over with, I had fun. I had a lot of fun.
Not only did he have fun, he did a stupid thing for a $5 bit. $5 bit.
But the doctor was my partner.
They bet him that he couldn't jump off of
The
this.
wing wall. That was the name of the thing that they put the water in. The wing wall was at least 5 stories high of a normal house or apartment building. At least 5 stories high. The doctor and I took a $5 bet that we could go off of this into the water. Dive into the water from this 5 stories high. And we did it. The 2 of us.
He said,
we didn't die.
Lately, he said, no,
We didn't die.
lately, he said to me, every time I think of that, I think, oh my God, was that stupid or what?
And in the water, in the water, you know, swimming around were barracuda fish. Barracudas are very dangerous. They come at you, they'll eat anything. And we had the guys up on top with guns shooting out around us to make sure. The bullets could have hit us, not only kill ourselves with the dive, but they were shooting all over.
This is funny, but this is the kind of
But
stuff. So letters kept coming, and then money started to come. How did you send it? Was it a check? Were they checks?
Money orders.
Money orders. That's right, started to come. He didn't know what to do with his pay. He didn't have any place to spend it, so I should save it for him. Well, in those years, a young girl comes into the bank and wants to open up a joint account. They wouldn't do that. They wouldn't even let me open the account without my mother or father signing it, let alone put his name on it. No way. Things like that didn't exist. I mean, you couldn't do that. So anyway, I think what I did was just have it in my name, and when you got home, I gave you all the money back. He went and bought clothes. So the joke was he was sending me the allotment. My allotment checks were coming. We weren't even engaged. We were still kids.
How long when he got home?
When he got home, I had graduated high school. He was planning to go back to high school. But once I graduated, and I had started, Wilkes was not Wilkes. It was Bucknell Junior College. It became Wilkes that year. And I had decided, and it wasn't like now. I decided I would use my grandfather's money that he gave me and go to college. So I marched myself into the college, And I said, would like to go to college. Where did you go to high school? JR. They called up JR. Wasn't great, but I passed everything. And they said, when do you want? And I said, I don't expect to graduate. I would just like some more, to learn some more. Everything English. I wanted like commercial stuff. I wanted English. I wanted English speaking. I wanted grammar. They filled up my course, and they sent me right to class. I paid the money and I only went one semester. And then he came home.
So what happened when he came home?
He didn't want to go back to high school because I was out of
I
high
went
school.
to school for a little bit through GI Bill of Rights. I started the school, but I also had my job at the American Furniture. So I didn't have enough time for both of them because I told you, the traveling manager, which I was going out of town. So I didn't have time for both. So I didn't go to school anymore.
And when I remember,
The school was at Wilkes College or Bucknell Junior.
became-
Wasn't at JR or any
it
of
was
those high
Bucknell
schools.
Junior, but I didn't even go the first semester. It was Christmas time that I marched myself down there. I decided I'm going to college. My father said girls don't have to go to college, and I said, well, I have my own money, and that's all that it cost. I spent I spent
You only
my-
spend
I
half
spent
because
half.
you gave your
All right.
sister half.
When I got home, to backtrack, when I got home with my grandfather, with the $600 in my bank account, my mother said, it isn't fair. I said, what's not fair? That he should just give it to you and not to Marilyn. So I gave half to Marilyn. But she'll swear that it never happened, but I swear that it did. But $300 that I had, plus I was doing babysitting and a couple of little things like that. And birthday money.
She never worked in her life.
I was working in the store.
Never
I was
worked
doing
in her
the bookkeeping. My father was paying me $18
Never worked in her
a
life.
week. You know that. So
telling
I had
you.
a couple bucks to save up. I never really had a real job. I never did. I either worked for my father, or.
She never collected 52. Oh, that's another part of
Oh,
our story.
I worked in the shoe stores in town.
But that was
I
another
sold
part of my story
purses
life.
and blouses.
Yeah.
On Saturday, we'd get paid $3 for the day, plus one a penny, $1 or something, so it would be $3. And if I sold $200 worth of stuff, which would have been a lot, it would have been another 20 cents, something like that.
So when
What were you
when
going to say?
guys-
Wait.
Another part of the what was I going to say now? The part of the story about when I came out of the service. Right before I came out, I was down in Norfolk, Virginia, and I was getting discharged. At this particular time, my father had a very bad situation happen. He was working in Plymouth, and he collected in and out of homes, you know, the 50 cents or whatever, which we were talking about before, and he got in his car and he didn't know there was a baby under the car.
A little boy was playing under the car.
And he killed that little child. They told me this when I got into Norfolk. My father came down to Virginia, to Alexandria, Virginia, where my sister Sally was living at the time. So I hitchhiked from Norfolk to Alexandria, Virginia to see my father. And we talked and everything else, and he didn't know if he could ever go back to work and so forth and so on. Then I got discharged and I came home. He did go back to work because there was another situation. As I got discharged from Norfolk, I took a bus to come home to Wilkes-Barre. When I came home from Wilkes-Barre, my father's territory, I told you, was Plymouth and West Nanticoke, which was almost a part of Plymouth. I knew where my father stopped every day. So I got into the bus, and the bus happened to stop at that diner. Was a stop before it got into Wilkes-Barre. I got off of that bus there instead of going home. And I sat in the diner because everybody knew me at the diner. So I sat in the diner, and they said, he'll be here, don't worry about it. And my father, sure enough, he came, right on his time. He came to have his coffee or whatever it is, and we hugged and everything else. And I went home. My father from there. When I got home, they already had a Kaufer meeting. the ones that were around. Maxie, Bobby, Ray,
Woody?
and I guess Max Siegel was involved in it at that time because I told you we lived in their home basically.
Was Benny home?
They were all married, whatever it was
Yeah,
doing,
oh.
but they made up that they were gonna, if I would do the family a favor and work for my father, I would get 5220 they called it. They give you, for 52 weeks, they give you $20 a week when you came out of the service if you didn't have a job. They would match that $20 and give me $40. No, $20, but I would have $40, and I would work with my father, which I did. And then he had a heart attack. Then he couldn't work. So I went back to my job at the American Furniture then. It was a little
Until we
stint.
got engaged.
It was only a little. I didn't take 52
Yeah.
weeks. I only took as many weeks as what happened, to my father.
Can you talk quickly about your brothers and sisters and how many? I know you have a lot of brothers.
Well, there's lots of us. There's Irving, Maxie, Bobby, Ray, Sammy, Phil, and Henry, and there's Hannah, Ruthie, Pearlie, and Sally. that should be 12, and myself is 13. That's what it should have come up to, all those
You're the
names.
youngest?
I'm the baby. There's only 4 of us left right now. 3 girls and 1 boy, myself.
Who's left?
Hannah is left. Pearl is left. Ruthie is left. And myself. Ruthie is in Florida. Pearl is in an assisted living home. Hannah's over in Kingston, and I'm...
What was your relationship like with?
We were a very close family. We had a
Very
lot of
close.
fights. Everybody fought with everybody else. I mean, it was no different than any other family.
Were you closer to the brothers and sisters that were closer in age to you, or?
Well, certainly.
Well, we were the closest actually to Bobby and Eki. And that is how we came to be living in the same duplex house that got flooded eventually.
Well, you want to talk about
Well, let
you
me,
got married, or what?
let me just
Oh, okay.
say something in between here. When you ask about how friendly and everything else, being the baby of the family, I was like the baby. I was not part of the rest because I was the baby. The thing that made everything closer is when I went into the service and I came out of the service, my oldest brother, which meant that there was 12 in between, we became very friendly, Nana and I. We were at their home, we did things with them and everything else. I have a niece that's only 4 years younger than me.
What's his name? Your older brother?
Phil, my brother Phil. We came home, we became very, very close with them. Now the ages,
I played mahjong
Yeah.
with Sarah.
the ages disappeared. The difference of age, which had to be close to 20 years in age difference,
Let me tell
disappeared
you-
and became
Let me
nothing.
tell you my version of this family. It overwhelmed me. I could not tell them apart. When we would all meet, like at Dad's house, wherever he happened to be living, on a Sunday, everybody we're going to see Dad. I would look at the wives because Henry and Phil, and they all looked the same to me,
Henry.
especially Phil and Henry. I would look at the wife, and if they moved away from their wife, sitting on the couch, I was lost again. It took me like 5 years to figure the whole thing out.
My brother Henry passed away. To tell you a story of this nature, my brother Henry,
Your name for him.
yeah, that's right. Your main name for him. My brother Henry passed away. Now we have a very good friend, Matty Mattioli, right? Now he worked with Henry. Now he walks into the place there, and he saw my brother Ray sitting Shiva. And he took a fit. He came to me. He said, "You have the body sitting up in a
He
seat."
thought he was.
He thought
They all
Ray
looked- they
was
all started
Henry.
to look alike. They were all.
And
looking very
he
much-
was very good friends. He sold him stuff from Corning Glasswork. He sold Henry, but he thought Ray was Henry sitting in the chair there. But everybody seemed to be close. It's different today and stuff like that. There's football games, baseball games. My dad used to take us to all of the Barons baseball games if we wanted to go. Most of us did.
Well,
He
going,
went.
so now we were in high school. We're back to high school. And we walked. Nobody got rides to school. We walked, and at that point, you were living on Wayne Lane, right? Wayne Lane with Bella. But accidentally, every morning, walking to school, here would come Irving from Wayne Lane, and we would walk to school together. Later, way later, he told me he would watch out for me.
I didn't have to go that way. I could have went down another way closer to the school, but I came out this way.
And it was a big coincidence. I thought, we were out, and we were on the same
Time. I
the
knew your
yeah.
time.
I know you know. I found out later, but these were the little things that were going on. So we had fun. We had fun in those years. So we really didn't court, and of course he almost burnt the house down, because we were all in our house that was upstairs from the store.
Her house.
My house that was upstairs from the store. And all the kids would it was the Heights, Wyoming, YMHA, the Heights, Wyoming. So all the kids were in there, and so my father always wore a hat, and the hat is sitting on the couch, and there's not enough room for everybody to sit down, and we were all kibitzing, and nobody drank yet or anything, but we had soda and chips or whatever like
Yeah.
that. You bought them.
No, that's
I wanted you to tell that, too.
And all of a sudden, we smell something is burning. What's burning? What's burning? He had taken my father's hat and put it on top of the lamp.
and the
And
heat of the bulb.
It burnt a
the
hole
lamp.
right through. It burnt a hole right through the hat. It could have caught a really big fire. So it was a big problem, and he could have gotten in the bad graces of my father, and we never would have gotten married. But that didn't happen. It happened.
I didn't go back to that house for a long time.
Oh, I didn't know how to tell my father what happened, and but somehow we got through that. But that remains in our
They did a
memory.
lot of bad things when she was growing up.
Terrible. I was terrible.
The lacquer table, that you
Diane and I
Diane.
painted. We had a party. They went out of town. We had a party, and we were tired, so we went to
We were
sleep.
already at 208.
We were in 208, which was the last store before, and that house was lovely. So so we went to sleep. Diane slept over, and in the morning I said we'd better clean up. And soda had spilled, and it had is it working? Is this working? And it
It's
had
a-
a glass table. A wooden table with a glass top stuck in it, like the rim of the wooden rim was around the glass, so you couldn't just get at it. We tried to get the rim of the glass off so we could clean all. It was wet. It was all wet. And when we got it off, the whole table was white. The soda had gotten under there and took all of
All
the
the pa-
paint off the table.
stain.
And the stain was gone. So, oh my God, Diane, we're in big trouble. So we went across the street. There was a hardware store. We bought a can of brown paint, and we painted it, and it dried. And my Zadie, who loved me, said, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" "Nothing, Zadie, nothing. We're just cleaning up. We didn't want anybody to know." And we painted it, and it dried, and we put the glass on. They never knew.
To this
They
day.
never knew.
Could have probably sold it to a customer. I've got a
They
problem.
probably did. What's the matter?
What?
Oh,
Oh, you want me to tell that?
tell the story.
I just told it to somebody, the story. The little cottages that were out at Harvey's Lake at picnic grounds, a group of us just girls, had rented one of those little cabins. And Irv would come out, and somebody else was coming out. I don't remember. Marilyn was there with us too. Nobody was home, so Marilyn was out there
And
too.
the former owner of the Eagles,
Oh,
Jerry.
Ann was there, and Jerry would come out.
This when you were in high school?
Yeah, and so we had the cabin, and we were having a lot of lousy summer weather. We rented it like for a month. You know, everything was cheap, and we would go swimming there, and the guys would come out at night, so it was fun because we would walk down to the picnic grounds. So Daddy came out one night. Irv came out one night You had a pickup truck then? Did you have a truck? Or that little car?
I had
with
the rumble seat.
the rumble seat car. He came out one night, and it was lousy weather, and we did whatever. We walked around picnic grounds, whatever we did there, and then we went back to the cabin, and I said, "Boy, would I like to go home and wash my hair." We didn't have a shower. The bathroom was outside. Anyway, it was an outhouse. I said, I would love to just go home. He said, well, do you have a key? I said, no, but I leave the window open in my room. I know I could get in. So I went home, and nobody had cell phones, and nobody had a phone, period, out there. So Daddy drove me to, he was Irv then, not Daddy. He drove me home, and I very cautiously opened the window and got in, and I couldn't wait till the morning. I'm going to tell them, surprise! And all of a sudden, I could see a light goes on in the hallway outside my door, and I backed up. I didn't want my father to see, but he had heard the window opening, and he had the gun in his hand, this big, but the bullets were in the other end. I started to scream, Daddy, Daddy, don't shoot me, don't shoot me, it's me, it's me.
He had the bullet in one hand and the gun in the other.
But when I looked at him, he didn't have, he had the gun, he had this gun, the shotgun, but he didn't put bullets in it, but it could have been a disaster.
I want to know about like when you decided to get married, like when you asked her to marry you.
Well,
He never asked me to marry
I gave
him.
her the ring, and
No, he never asked me to marry him.
No.
We were just.
Yeah,
it
we
was-
talked about
You
it.
never said, "Will you marry me?"
No.
You never said that, so you
No.
didn't ask me. Don't argue. But
I always did
we
things on my
became
own.
a thing. We became a thing. It was like understood. It was understood. And then he came out of the service, and it was actually understood. And he went over to Bob Kleinman's jewelry store. Bob just passed away, but he had a jewelry store in those days. A little cubby called Nice Stuff.
next to Greenberg.
And he comes into the store. I was in the store, and he hands me the box. He said, here. And that was how we got engaged.
It wasn't really the box. It was the
A
case.
pretty box.
Did you
The
hang
case
around to
that the
see it,
ring.
to see
No,
what
I
you
took
liked?
off. I ran like
I
hell.
still have it, so I liked it. I still have it.
Yeah. That's how we got engaged.
How old are you?
It doesn't, yeah, it fits
Told you
my
how old we
pinky
were.
now.
19.
When we got engaged, we were not quite 19.
No, yeah, we were. I was 20 in May, and you were.
I was not quite, I was 18, I guess, when we got engaged.
It was for your birthday, so it was your 18th
Oh,
birthday.
it must have been my 18th birthday,
Tell
because
about the wedding.
Oh, we had a great wedding.
we had a
real
beautiful
high
wedding
class
in the shul.
Tell the date.
Well, we decided first. We said we did not set a date, but we said let's get married in June because June is a nice time to get married. However, my parents went to Florida for the first time and came home singing the praises of Florida. At that time, there was no air conditioning in hotels, so Florida would shut down end of March. Did you know that? People who lived there, well, that was one thing, but the hotels could not exist, and there were no condos yet. Anyway, so if we wanted to go down, we had to go there before the end of March. So then we looked at the date, and we did something terrible because all we were thinking about is ourselves. We did not think about Eki and Bobby at all, but we did something terrible. And we got married 3 weeks before Eki and Bobby, who had set their date a long time before us, who were engaged before us and had set the date. And all we were thinking, but all these years I've always had a funny feeling about it. So their anniversary was April 11th, and our anniversary was March 21st. We went to Florida. We drove down in his father's car.
We got married in the synagogue on Wall Street, Yan Shemus.
We got married in the
And we
basement.
had the reception downstairs.
We got married there. We had the reception. I was very busy that whole 2 weeks before the wedding, washing the dishes. I had help. I had a lady that used to help my mother, and Marjorie, and she and I washed and dried all the dishes. We had long tables, and we have pictures of that.
And it was catered.
And it was she made the dinner. Didn't she make it?
No, what's the
My
name?
mother went shopping for the stuff.
Yeah, but
Who
we
made it?
had
I don't remember. Somebody made the dinner.
Who
and we
did
had
the
a
camp when the
wonderful
first
wedding.
opened up?
Whatever.
It
Yeah.
was her sister-in-law that did it.
But believe me, we couldn't care less about it. We were
Was
getting
her
married,
sister-in-law.
and that's all there was to it. And we drove to
Mitchnick's
Florida.
wife
We had
did it.
one credit card. Gas credit cards had just started to happen. My father gave us the credit card. His father loaned us the
Brand new Hudson.
Hudson car. That was
Brand new
fantastic.
Hudson.
I didn't drive. So Irv drove the whole thing. It took us 4 days. There was no 95. It took us 4 days. When we were in, actually in,
Jacksonville?
Jacksonville, we were still far away. But when we were in Hollywood, we were still out of town. To go to Miami from Hollywood was like a whole big drive down because the highway wasn't even split. The highway going and coming was on the same road.
Tulane, it was one, though.
And our license
US
was
one.
in the front and the back. We would hunk each other if we saw another Pennsylvania car, so we weren't going too fast, right? We had a wonderful time. The two of us fell in love with Florida immediately, and that's why we go to Florida now. We immediately
Where
were in
did
love
you
with
stay?
Florida. We stayed in a
On
hotel.
Biscayne Bay.
It was very expensive. It cost $35 for the week.
That's what we paid.
My
And I
mother
had
and
this
father
brand
had
new
stayed
Hudson.
there, and that's why we stayed there. We were afraid even to go to ask the price of the condos, the hotels on the beach, but we pretend we stayed on the beach because we went to the beach every
Every
day.
day. But we had this brand new Hudson, and the first time we were ever there was no parking lots like you have today at a hotel or anything else. They were just parking where
Like-
Biscayne Bay is. You parked across the
Like,
street.
yeah.
Where was there was palm trees. What grows on palm trees? Right, I have this brand new Hudson, and I come out in the morning and I see these coconuts all over, and I think, "Oh my God!
had a
If one of
problem,
them hit the
yeah.
car, I would have died."
But we
I
never
would
had,
have
we never had a
absolutely.
problem.
We didn't have that problem, but I just we
We were
came
very,
out.
very naive. The two of us were kids. We didn't know anything. We were dying to go to a racetrack. However,
Oh, yeah.
we didn't know where the racetrack was, and the two of us were even too shy to ask anywhere. First of all, the first day when we came back to the hotel, going to checking the car because your father wanted the car to get checked after that long trip. We left the hotel very, very early in the morning. We come back, the room is not done up. So from the get-go, it was my job to do it. So I had to call down
What is
housekeeping.
today? So what
It
changed?
started then. Call down housekeeping. This is Mrs. Kaufer. It was hard to say. I remember it was hard to say, but I said, Mrs. Kaufer, and blah, blah. Is there any reason that our room wasn't done up? It was like 90 degrees out, you know. Just a moment, we'll check. Da, 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 da. She comes back and she said, somebody's going to come up immediately to do up the room. We thought you were in the room.
All day. This is till 5 o'clock at night.
Aunt Shirley, she rest in peace. Aunt Shirley said to me, Hindy, did they know you were on your honeymoon? I said, no, nobody knew we were on honeymoon. Then I told this story. Well, she laughed every time. She's probably laughing right now from heaven at me because she said, and nobody knew you were on your honeymoon? And they thought 90 degrees, you stayed in the room all day? So anyway, what was I saying about it before going to the beach every day?
They spent the honeymoon on the beach.
No,
We went
we were going to racetrack.
Oh, the racetrack. So we didn't know what to do. And then we see a bus going to the racetrack. It said racetrack on it. So we followed it. We went to the racetrack. We weren't even legal, but
They
nobody
weren't even
stopped us.
supposed to sell us tickets. We weren't old enough to get into the racetrack.
But nobody stopped us. And we went to the racetrack, and we bet $2, and we won. And we bet $2, and we won. 3 times we bet $2, and we won. And we now had like $19, which
Something
is,
like
we were
that.
talking about a lot of money. And so we went to a nightclub that night with the $19.
We went to the
And
Latin
we had our
Quarter.
first fight in the nightclub.
In Latin
Because we
Quarters.
looked Latin Quarter, and we have a table for 2, and it was beautiful, and it was very exciting. And first fight was this. We look at the menu, and I said, what are you going to have? He said, I'm going to have a filet. I said, you're going to have fish? He said, no, filet is steak. I said, no, filet is fish. Every Tuesday, my mother makes filet, and it's fish. It's always fish. What do we have in filet? He said, no, filet is steak. So called over a waiter. That was our first fight, and he won.
Always
I
won.
tell you,
Always won.
he always won.
On our seventh,
This is all true stuff.
yeah, on our 7th anniversary down in Florida,
We went back to Florida.
Yeah, we went to the.
In between that, we took we had 2 children by then. Pop said to me, my father said to me, never should do that to me. He said, if you could get ready with the 2 kids, I'll take you to Florida with us this year. Because he kept saying to me things like, oh, when we're in Florida, they were going every year after this, by this time. When I see the kids all tanned up, I feel so bad that your kids are not tanned up, because it was now December, and they're going to be leaving Christmas Day. And if you could get ready by day after tomorrow, I'm going to take you and the 2 kids to Florida. And guess what? I did it, and we went. My daughter Terry was still in diapers,
and a cast.
And a cast. No more cast. She had heavy shoes, special shoes. That were like to straighten out the one leg, the foot. And Gloria, so you had your 2nd birthday in Florida, Terry, and I remember putting on, and we had a wonderful time. And we had no reservation. Oh, and I'll tell you what I did on the way down, stopping at those motels, because it was still no 95 and it was still a long trip. The motels were little cabins. They were not like the motels that we know now. And he would go into there were a couple. They had started to build a couple. He would go in and he would come out and he said, my God, they want a fortune for the motel. And I said, Daddy, what are you telling them? Who's in the car? He said, I told them my wife and my daughter and my daughter's children. I said, no, you don't tell them that. You only need 1 room. I'm going to sleep with the girls. You tell them my wife and my daughter and my 3 daughters are there. And our 3 children, my wife and 3 children. I looked like a kid anyway, and the prices became wonderful.
Single room price.
A single room. We don't need no 2 room, and that's how we did it. Now we're almost in Miami, and at that time, Florida was Miami Beach. They call it South Beach now, but that was Miami Beach. And let me tell you, it was far, and we had no reservation. And I said to my father, in those years, people they winged it. And so we went. When we went to the Shoreham Norman, and we waited outside, and he went in, and he told us we're staying there. It was like a dream come true. I loved it. It was so wonderful. It was 2 hotels together, a whole block, and alongside were the motels together. And we got the first motel room, a double room, 2 rooms, and a bathroom, and a hot plate type of kitchenette. No kitchen, but it was like a little cubbyhole thing there that you could cook a little bit. On the ocean. We could hear the waves coming up, and they had a woman who would take care of the children in the sand.
Hindy,
and the
where
pool
was your husband
on the
at
other
this
side.
Where was your husband
You mean
at
Irving?
this?
You mean Irving? You know where he was? Home. It was the first time we had ever been separated, the whole month, and we had no phone in that that little, what do you call it? Terry, did you have any memory at all? No, you were too young. Your 2nd birthday, I put on a red and white with hearts sunsuit, and I said something that, of course, isn't true anymore. This is probably the only time she's going to wear a sunsuit for her birthday. And we had a cake, and we made a whole thing out by the pool was on the other side, which was perfect because it was safe where we were. In the morning, my 2 little girls would go out and dig in the sand. The sand was up to our little porch, if you want to call it a porch.
Yeah.
You never saw it. Oh, yeah. So
I
okay.
sure did.
So what happened? I loved that place so much that when we were married 7 years, we decided to go to Florida, just the 2 of us. And I guess Marilyn watched the kids or my mother. I don't remember
Whoever.
now. Doesn't
But
matter.
we went ourselves, and we went.
And we
to
went
the,
and we stayed there.
Yeah, we
So
went
he
to
did see it.
the Playboy Club.
We did a lot of wonderful.
Henny Youngman was the entertainment. That's we went to the Playboy Club, and they marked the bottle of whiskey. That's what it was, a cover charge. So they marked the bottle of whiskey with a crayon of how much you can drink for your cover charge. We weren't drinking. We still at 7 years. Well, how we were 26 years old at that time. We
Yeah.
still weren't drinking.
I said we started to drink like those after dinner drinks, like
Maybe a little
the
bit. Or
the
something.
sweet things.
When did
Yeah.
you guys start drinking?
When we start drinking,
We don't drink yet.
When's it cocktail hours? start?
Cocktail hour. You know what, Rye? I don't.
cocktail party,
I'm
cocktail
gonna
hour.
know. He's dad. Pop is
Cock-
wrong because I remember
Slow gin fizz.
a slow gin fizz. Your brother Bobby introduced me to that,
Yeah.
and then I remember having a baby already. But I didn't drive yet, so I didn't have any proof of
didn't.
my age. I was 21. I was
Yeah,
21,
know,
and
but
I
you
was.
didn't drink
We
whis-
were out with
whiskey.
another
We
couple.
took the shul when you said prayers in the morning. You had a glass of whiskey or a shot of whiskey.
I got drunk. I got really drunk with that
Well,
time.
you weren't married.
I know. And
Well,
I
then what are
really
you
got
saying you're
drunk. I
getting
drank
drunk?
everything in the house because
But
what
you weren't
happened was
married.
I was doing the bookkeeping. I forgot about this story. I was doing the
You
bookkeeping.
getting tired, David?
My father, are we talking too much? Is this too
No,
long?
go ahead. I don't know. this
My
story.
father was Johnny on the spot to pay the bills. They had
name
to
was
be
David.
paid. Yeah, they had
Her
to
father's
be
name was
paid
David.
in the discount period or else. And I took care of that, but I didn't have the privilege of signing them. He had to sign them. So he signed them, put them back in the envelopes, and I guess I put them back in the drawer and forgot to mail them. Well, when he found that, I got it like we were engaged. We were engaged.
Yeah,
'Cause
I came to the house.
My mother called you because I got hysterical. I went into hysterics, and then nobody could quiet me down. And then I drank everything that I could find, which was
Mogan,
Mogan
all
David.
the Mogan David,
Mogan
that was
David.
it.
Mogan David.
Yeah, more Mogan
It was.
David.
I drank until I was in a stupor, and I started to throw up. And that's my mother called the doctor and called Irving, and it was. So that's when I started drinking.
And that's when I had to start drinking. From there on, I had to start. I couldn't handle it
And
anymore.
I finally apologized to my father, and I don't remember what else happened, but I forgot.
I would drink.
forgot about that. Story.
I would drink at bar mitzvahs and
Did I ever
weddings
tell you
and
that
stuff.
story
You know,
through the
whatever
years?
they, but
I
nothing.
forgot about it. I
Not
can't
till
believe
I-
that this is coming. All things are coming back to me. Things are
So,
coming back.
how long you guys been married now?
What?
How long have we been married now?
56 years. Is that a lot of years?
It was 56 years.
1948 is 2000.
And now we are in Florida when we got married in March, so we are in Florida at that time. And our friends have been making it very nice for us every year on our anniversary. They make some kind of a celebration for us at the club or at the, whatever.
Are you guys still happy after 56 years?
Not really, but it's too complicated to get a divorce. It costs too much, and signing the name a million times. I mean,
That's
so.
the public camera.
It's funny. I'm kidding around. Am I not allowed to kid around with
No.
you to the camera?
Not to the camera.
Not to the camera to
No.
tell my great grandchildren what a good sense of humor I have.
All I know is everything is in her name.
He has to be good to me.
I don't know nothing. So that's how it is.
And that's how it should be. So Ryan, you know, that's how it should be.
And that's how it is. We went through all these years. Oh, we had a 1 year that our grandchildren and their parents came to live with us here. I remember something of that nature in our life. I wasn't allowed. You can't do nothing. You can't come down to eat till they get out of school or so.
No,
stay up
no,
in your room.
I said stay in the room till they all leave because
That's right.
no kids can handle 4 parents.
Right.
2 parents are enough. And then when you all would leave, then we would come down. We didn't have a schedule. We didn't have to come down to breakfast before you left for school.
And I remember I had a favorite chair that whenever I came home, somebody was in it.
Terry, you know what? That was a happy time for me. I really enjoyed that.
We
that
did. We
period
had
of
a
time.
we had a
And
good
then we
couple
picked
of
up and
months.
went to
Fond
Florida.
memories of that.
Yeah, we kept it separate, and every now and then I would call and say, I'm cooking tonight, so don't bring anything. And and if you want
Whenever
to,
I have a
Well,
hoagie,
we
but I
kept
think
going out
that
and-
memory always
hoagie
comes, no matter
store.
where I have it. When
Yeah.
I'm biting into a hoagie, I always have that memory.
from
Because when you move back down to Barney Farms, they used to call me, if you're coming down here, stop and pick a couple hoagies
Yeah,
up
Sunday
at the little
mornings used to
store.
bring
love
the
those
cookies
The
from
Danish and
there.
everything.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you remember the Danish and everything I used to bring from down
that
there?
store was handy. They're opened again down
Oh,
there.
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
they're doing pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kids love
But-
that. Well, they have lots of fun.
but he
It was
did,
closed for a while, but
He had
yeah.
a good store there
But
at that time.
I don't think too many people could have made that work like we made it
We
work.
did.
Yeah, we did. And for
And
how
I
many
bragged
months?
to people about coming home to find my laundry done.
Mm. I like to do laundry.
Soup on the
Homemade
stove.
Mm.
It was, I said,
When I made soup,
had
I
to
mean,
be
you
a
can't make a little bit of
full-time
soup, and it was fun. It was fun, and I remember once bringing Chinese for an army home. I went stopping at the takeout in the mall. It was the one in the mall, and I said, "I'm bringing Chinese home today, so don't bring anything." But I didn't. We went out. Daddy and I were going
We-
over to the
we
club.
did.
We were going over to the
We did
club
our
and going
thing.
out a few things. A
Oh, you
few
know what I
nights.
want to know about? Tell me about when you worked. You told me like the stuff you were doing when you were working at Kaplan's when it was like an appliance store and stuff. And it
Well,
was
when I first went to Kaplan's Furniture Company, I told you what I did at American Furniture. And now I came to Kaplan's Furniture. Kaplan's Furniture Company, I became an assistant on the truck. That's what I came to. So Pete and I made all the deliveries. Pete Demtitian, who worked for us, only came in
Tell
the
me,
afternoon.
I'll finish this story.
All right? He only came in the afternoon, part-time. So I used to make the small deliveries with the truck, whatever was small,
Terry, you have to remember Pete. Yeah.
in the morning. Then Pete would come in, and we would make
You
all
did?
of these deliveries. He and I would make the
We
deliveries.
used to go to their house.
And that's what we used to do. This was the store. Then
Then
her father said-
I'll tell the rest. Then my mother called me on the telephone. Then he would come home and he would go dressed looking like a delivery person with those heavy plaid shirts, the kind, warm, that it was warm. So then my mother calls me on the telephone and she said, "Hindy, I've got to talk to you. Why doesn't Irv dress a little nicer to come to the store?" I said, I asked him that, and he said if he would be able to, if someone would teach him or ask him to be a salesperson, then he would dress different, but he's working on the truck, Ma. So my mother went and told my father, and the next thing that happened was if he puts on a shirt and he dresses nice, I'll teach him, and and that's how he started to work in the store. Then he started to be a
but there was
salesperson.
a situation.
Oh. That I don't
Because-
know about.
Well, you probably know about it. I was working. The store was open 9 to 9. I basically only worked 9 to like 6 and went home, right? This clean shirt business and everything else was from 6 to 9. It wasn't from 9 to 9. It was only from 6 to 9. All right? So I start working 6 to 9, right? And I came home, and I either had a fight with her or whatever the case may be, and she said, "Go tell him." So I went to her father, and I said to him, I said, I was working 9 to 6. It's bad enough. That's 6 days a week, 54 hours there. Now I'm adding on 3 hours every single day, the same 6 days a week. That's 18 more hours. Don't I get any extra pay or a commission on what I sell and everything else? He said, "We'll see about it. We'll see about it." And I got fired.
You got fired.
The 6 to 9, I got fired.
No.
Yes, I did. Yeah, he fired me from the 6 to 9 because he didn't want to
I'm
pay
glad we're
me
doing this
any
because
extra money.
I don't remember about that.
Well, did you ever get any extra money? No,
he
he
would
never
make-
paid.
He would
that-
put me on his lap, and he would say, "If you need money,
Yeah, that's what he would do.
need money, you ask me. I don't want to ever hear that you just took money." I said, "Daddy, would we take money?" I said, he said, "So just ask me." But he had me on his lap.
Yeah.
And then I finally, I couldn't handle that kind of stuff. And I had a screaming session about treat me like a woman. I'm not a child anymore.
But I told him
And everything changed.
He fired
Everything
me
changed.
from the 6 to 9s. But then he made a deal. You come back, work the 6 to 9, and
Yeah.
we'll pay you a couple dollars an hour for each one. So I said, all right, I'll come back to work.
So what year was it that you bought the store from him?
After Marv was in the store quite
We
a
only
while.
bought a third. We worked there, and Marvin came to the store 8 years later, and we talked about it, and he came to us, and he said about the partnership again. It would be 33 and a third down the line. He was going to keep a third for himself, which he did, and then he happened to pass away. Then Marvin and I bought the
So
third.
that was why my mother was getting those checks.
Yeah.
And then she went in the nursing home. When Marilyn and I had the fight, I stopped the checks. And you were still writing those checks for my mother.
You were leaving them in a
Do
drawer.
you remember that?
No,
I
they were
s-
left in a drawer.
Yeah, but I
So
wouldn't
you're
take the
saying
checks.
so like 1968 or so? He
Yeah.
died in 69?
I forgot this has been taped.
It's okay.
He died in
You could take
1969.
something. You could
We
take-
became partners before
You don't
that,
think
but
that was
Marv
shame?
and I built the second floor.
Oh, okay.
He had nothing to do with that. He didn't want
he
no
had
part
a
of
heart attack.
it.
He was in our house. Do you remember that?
He didn't want any part of the
What year
second
would you
floor.
think that was?
Tell me about that.
So we built it on our own. We got the money from the bank on our
Before
own,
Pam, so it was 1963, 62.
It had to be before Pam.
and that's how it went.
Can you tell me about your parents?
He was recuperating in our house. Hmm.
I want to know about Poppy and Mama. Like what happened. You know, just talk about.
They had a happy marriage. Yeah, they were naive. My father said things to me like in the hospital when Gloria was born. "I know what you were doing." He said.
Tell
to
him about
me.
your father going to Canada and your mother.
They used to go to Canada. He would say to her, "Get ready, Lil, get ready. We're leaving in the morning." The morning was before it got light out. They would leave, and my mother would go. She would start talking to herself about it, but she would pack up the sandwiches and get the things ready to bring home the fish. And most of the time, they brought home fish. Way, way, way later, I heard sometimes they didn't catch fish,
They
but
bought
other
fish.
people, they bought it from someone else who caught them. But you know what? And they were doing something they didn't spend a lot of money. When they were doing this, they always did it without a lot of money. So they had met a guy who would take them out, what do they call him? He's
A guide.
A guide. They would take him.
They went to Gananaqua, Canada.
And he had a boat, and he would take them fishing on these beautiful lakes that cost a fortune now to go on. So they would bring him all kinds of presents, but they would take it out of the boxes because they didn't want to get caught taking them across the what do you call it,
Border.
like merchandise. Even if it was a gift, it might have been a problem. They took him everything. They took coffee pots. They took all kinds of appliances, everything from the store, and so the price was very cheap for him. They did a lot of years.
And he caught a fish.
They were doing
that's
it
in
out
the
of
store.
they were doing it right out of Ryan. They were doing this right out of the cottage. They would leave from the cottage
can
and
tell
come
it
back
in
to
there.
the cottage.
I'm just running out of tape.
Tape.
We're talking too
That's
long.
okay.
No, I want to find out a few more things. We're almost done.
Okay.
Right.
But
Go ahead.
is it okay if I just switch?